All right. This is your boy Marcus. We are continuing our doubleheader. I will be talking to the Daniel Troutman. Shout out to Lauren. He's wrapping up his interview right now. Hopefully you was in tune with that one. Let me see now where. All right, I'm gonna send this to the Daniel Troutman, not just Daniel Troutman, the Daniel Troutman. He made sure to put "the" in his handle there. I'm gonna send him the live. Hopefully he's prepped, because tonight we're gonna talk. Obviously we're gonna talk about the Daniel Troutman, but we're also gonna talk politics, specifically Trumpism. Um, can this country recover? Because, as we all know, Donald Trump has done some pretty good damage to our institutions. And some are just calling him a symptom of a problem that's been brewing since, I don't know, Reconstruction maybe. Just all these unchecked issues that we either swept under the rug or just did enough to go by. And we see Daniel here now, just sent him a little wave. Can't wait to talk to this guy. He's a really dope friend. Hadn't talked to him in a while, so it's gonna be interesting. He's full of knowledge. All he does is study these current events. But he did go to school for journalism, which I will talk to him about that as well. Just waiting on him to. Oh wait, no, that's the. I'm sending him a little. Yeah, so it's waiting on him to respond.
What up? What up? Can you hear me?
Grandmother just called. Okay. Hold on, show.
Okay.
Yes. I was saying, hold on. I'm on the show. I'm on a show. A show. We're doing a show. Weekly shows. We do. Hmm. All right. Hold on. Sorry for the delay, folks. Family calls. You gotta answer to them. Hey.
Show? What show? Show? What show?
that was my lovely grandmother, ladies and gentlemen. She's amazing.
Oh,
Marion. Marion. Oh, she's outside. This is real janky. I am so sorry, Daniel.
that's fine, man. Hey, we out here.
making the best. My grandma wants it when you get done. She want me? Yeah, yeah. All right. Let's get back in my showroom. All right. I see you got a haircut, man. I was expecting the epic beardage.
You know what, man? The epic beardage is here, but as far as the haircut, man, I've had to cut my own hair.
Oh, well, that's a COVID skill. All right. Well, I'm back.
Yes, yes.
I'm back in the element now. You see my pretty face. I see your pretty face.
Oh,
So
there it is, man. How you been, man? How you been?
I'm doing well. So please, Mr. Troutman, introduce yourself to everybody. Uh, Tell them
Man,
what you do.
hold on. Do I look all right? It's been a minute since I did one of these.
Come on, man. We know you're media
I should be. So what's up, everybody? My name is Daniel Troutman, like the fish. Um, I I do a lot. I, like many of you, have been, in lockdown in this pandemic. Just trying to get through it, trying to handle it. It's been tough, but we get through it. I've known Marcus for years. Time flies, man. Time
Time
flies.
does fly.
um, I remember you when you were but a young lad who was graduating, trying to figure out what he wanted to do next.
Yeah, and I tell you, a lot of things have changed.
Man, look, I tell you, man, I feel for y'all. I really do because, like, I've got two siblings who are 20, and so, like, my wife and I talk about this all the time. Like, I just can't imagine what it's like for y'all to come out of school and come into this nonsense. Like when I graduated, like you mentioned, I graduated with a degree in journalism, and I came out during the recession. You know what I mean?
Mm,
And so you come out and you're looking around like, oh, I spent this money on this education. I had these things called dreams.
right.
And that's not going to work out. So what do I do now? And you've got to figure it out and make adjustments. And you guys are having to do this in the middle of, these political highs and lows, rising fascism, white supremacy is back in. Yay. Oh no.
When did it leave?
Look. Whew, we could talk about that. And
That's
so
actually, well, yeah, that is something that we're going to talk about. But yeah, but keep going.
no, it's just that you guys have so much to deal with, and it's not fair. Like, there's like, if you look at American history just in the last, if you just take a snapshot of 50 years, like, there's a lot that is going on each decade, but certain groups, like your age group, like y'all are going through stuff that the baby boomers never had to go through, and it's just not fair. It's frustrating to see that y'all have to keep going through this. But yet and still we persist. I Although I have done many a podcast and recorded things before, I'm a little rusty, a little bit. So what I would like to do is just talk about pretty much whatever you want to talk about. So you lead the way, and I'm sure I have an hour of content on whatever subject you bring up.
Well, okay. Well, I guess let's obviously what's fresh on our mind is the inauguration. I just
Yeah,
want to know, like, what was swimming through your head during the
man.
inauguration? Just watching.
Man, okay, so many things. Let me rewind before the inauguration, before um, the insurrection attempt by the privileged, entitled white people. Um, I went on kind of a self-imposed silence, if you will, in regards to criticism of Biden, of Democrats, because in my circles, people like to fake outrage about, well, um, you shouldn't say anything bad because you're going to hurt their chances in the election. And my response to that is, well, my following is not that big. So let's not act like everybody's listening to me. But
Right.
I decided to kind of do a self-imposed silence, which I am happy to say is over now because all those elections are over. So now I can say whatever I want about Biden. I can say whatever I want
Boy.
about Democrats, and it's going to be great. So this is going to be the first time I share some honest thoughts about Biden. So the main things I walked into the election with were, number one, fear, because I just wasn't sure. If I'm going to be honest, I wasn't sure Biden was going to survive today, because looking at these folks take the Capitol, and just walk in and take a podium out, looking at the plans that they found, that they were going to have more protests in all 50 states at all 50 capitals, which begs the question of how are y'all getting to Hawaii? Although today I learned that there's a nice little contingent of Trump supporters in Japan. I watched footage of them do a march in Tokyo, which,
Really?
yeah, I think it was Reuters or AP. I like to get my
Like,
news
like,
from,
like, were they like actual Japanese people or just like,
yes,
oh,
yes,
yeah,
yes, bro.
that is so weird because like, I forgot. I think like I think like doesn't he have a fan base in Nigeria too? And I'm just like, you don't even live here. Like,
Yeah,
you don't know this guy like we do.
but you know what? He is dangerously effective at speaking to people's feelings and desires. One thing I always tell people about Trump that makes him effective, because Trump is terrible. Like, he is horrible in every way imaginable. But what makes him so effective is that he is good at conning people.
Oh,
Okay. But here's the thing about being a con artist. Con artists have power as long as their victims refuse to acknowledge that they're being conned. So,
boy.
yeah. So these folks couldn't see that they were conned, and then it was hard for them to accept the fact that they were conned, which let him continue to have power. And that's just for the folks who were conned, because you have a whole subset of people who were just like, look, I know what this man is, but he's going to get me a tax cut.
Right.
So there was fear, because I looked at everything that happened. I looked at that coup. I looked at, and as you look at the coup that happened on the 6th, right? And you look at all the details that have come out since then. One thing that I've done, and I encourage people to do this, when you're getting your news, like you mentioned, I went to school for journalism. I went to school, I actually wrote for a newspaper before I got to college. A funny story, I actually was on a newspaper staff with one of my soon-to-be journalism professors. We were both at the same newspaper the summer before I started college. But I went in for newspaper, graduated with broadcast. So I've done a little bit of everything. I worked at an actual news station when I graduated. I say all this because, like, this is my field, and I try not to get my news from places like CNN, MSNBC. Sometimes I'll go there just to confirm a big event and see that it's been reported there, but I try to get as much news as I can from Reuters, Associated Press, BBC News. Yeah.
Giggity. I know. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Le Monde, which is a French publication. I try to get my news from around the world. And I say all this because if you looked at the American news when the insurrection happened, it was like, oh my goodness, look at these folks. What are they doing? This is crazy. Mm-hmm. If you went to the international publications, bruh, they were like, oh my goodness, these Americans are wilding and they're trying to take the Capitol. It was a much harsher tone from the international news early on.
Oh,
but yeah,
for sure.
Was.
Like, I remember this YouTuber named Aaron Ra. He said, like, yo, if you want to learn American news, watch foreign news. They'll tell you everything. So yes, yeah, I understand.
Because they're not trying to sell the sensationalism the same way that American outlets are about American news. They sell their own sensationalism. So the British news, they've got their sensationalism about like Brexit. Like, yeah. but they're still an expert on Brexit because it's in their backyard. But I say all that because as the news trickled out about the insurrection, I looked at the news that came out and I went, man, y'all really sold these white folks short. Because as the news came in, it was just, oh no, they were just walking through and no. They were urinating in the halls. They were spreading feces everywhere. They stole Pelosi's laptop, and according to recent reports, according to the FBI, have been trying to sell it to Russia. They took zip ties. Yes.
But they're the Patriots, though.
Yes. We're the Patriots, but we're just trying to get our country back.
We're just trying to sell information to a foreign nation.
Yeah, like the woman who stole the laptop, packed a bag, told her mother, I'll be back. You won't hear from me for a couple of weeks, and it's just gone.
Right.
And they're trying to find her. Add to that, the guy who sat on Pelosi's desk, the person who took the podium, the person who actually took the podium home, the guy who brought zip ties, the people who brought gallows, the people who were talking about assassinating Mike Pence and Nancy Pelosi, Speaker, like that. It's just wild. And so I came into the inauguration like, please God, let this man survive today. And I don't even like Joe Biden. And so then I get to the inauguration and I'm looking at like a live stream while I'm working. And I'm like, okay, cool. He looks like he's all right. And then I started hearing people talk. Like they started talking and they started speaking in platitudes about how great America is and the democracy survived. And that's when I clicked the X in the browser and just said, stop. Like, I just couldn't do it, man, because it was just so, like, it was just such bloviation, such empty, hot air. Like I heard Amy Klobuchar talk, and I'm like, I don't want to hear you talk. So I exit out. The wonderful young lady, Amanda Gorman, who did the poem, props to her. I'm really glad that she was there, but I just couldn't really do her poem because I'm like, are we just going to pretend like white supremacists didn't try to take the Capitol? Are we going to pretend like the President of the United States didn't consistently oppose election results, no matter all the certifications of the elections, no matter the Republicans who told him he was wrong? All of this, he did that. Oh, and by the way, he just stopped working as the President of the United States while we have over 400,000 deaths from COVID, with millions of infections. We have overwhelmed hospitals in California, Texas, Florida, Georgia, you name it. It's just absolutely crazy, everything that's going on. And in light of that, I'm like, I know there's all this pomp and circumstance with the inauguration, but like, I don't care. I do not care. Like I have no problem admitting I voted for Biden. I voted for Warnock. I voted for Ossoff, the Obama clone. Bro, I can't tell you how many times his ad would come on the TV. And
I mean,
just like,
all I saw was the right wing ad. So, I mean, I was relieved every time I seen like a Warnock or an Ossoff ad. Like, oh my goodness, okay, these people aren't mentally deranged. You know what I mean?
if you are now, I was about to crack a joke. Like, if you're seeing all these right wing ads, what are you doing wrong, brother? But now I'm just playing. Now, it's funny you bring that up because I didn't get any right wing stuff.
Really? Well,
But
not even
that
on
was
your TV, like.
so they did, but I felt like that was more location. Like for example, with the mail, I don't think I got any. I don't think I got hardly anything from a Republican in the mail. My wife got more of the mix. I got mostly Warnock and Ossoff stuff. On YouTube, it was just, bruh. I have. There are very few things I regret in my life more than ending my YouTube premium during the election.
Oh man.
That's one of the worst things I've ever done in my life.
Bruv, the copium you could have seen from all the right wing.
But here's the right wing ads were infuriating because they were so dishonest.
Oh, they were stupid as hell.
They were stupid, they were dishonest, they were disingenuous, and if you watch them carefully, they reached farther and farther levels of desperation and absolute nonsense.
I mean, if you call Biden far left, I just I can't take you serious. I know what you're doing. You're selling to a base, like you know.
You know what's frightening about it is that there are people who actually feel this way. Like they actually think that Biden is left wing. And I understand why to a degree people think this. Like it boils down to the fact that the Overton window in the United States, the window of what's acceptable political discourse, has shifted so far right every election, every year, that what was once right wing is now centrist. And this and it's true. This is one of the things I tell people all the time about politics. I ask people, where do you think Bernie is on the spectrum? Left, middle, right wing? Where do you think Bernie is? And a lot of people are going to say what? What do you think people are going to say about Bernie?
No, they're going to say left, of course.
Right. Except Bernie's not left wing. And the fact that we see Bernie as left wing shows how far the Overton window of
It,
acceptable political thought has moved to the right.
you know, I have to say too. One of the things I was going to mention, like, I don't follow politics as much as you do, but at the same time, like, I'm technically like more, what's the word? Like more informed than the average person, and that's not saying much for an American. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I just, I can name 3 branches of government, but like obviously the average American is like uninformed, and so I want to kind of jump ahead a bit, and actually, I'm gonna respond to your comment on the inauguration, but I want to get I wanted to talk to you about Trumpism. Now, the Donald here, though, yeah, like, like in 2015, I'm like, you know what? It's good that he's bringing attention to the fact that the media can be biased and can lie. But what we saw him do was he pretty much damaged trust in these institutions. You try to talk to a Trump supporter, you give them like actual sources, what they gonna tell you? Fake liberal media. That's what the man. Well, they probably won't say the man, but that's what the Jews want you to think. Like depending on how deep they are. But
That's
like,
true. Yeah.
I mean, in your opinion, like, can this be repaired? Because during the inauguration, one of the things that I forget his name, but one of the reporters will say, like, at least those who will listen, as far as Trump supporters. That's scary because we already know now that these people are watching this inauguration thinking this is all a lie. Like, like, how do we fix this? And can it be fixed?
Man, that's a really great question. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know if I'm going to give the answer that I don't want to say you want to hear, but I struggle with this question all the time with my friends because to piggyback on something you said, I do follow politics very closely. I can't always say that I like that. I just can't help it. Like, because whether it was just my interest in politics growing up, whether it was the time that I worked with Black Lives Matter Atlanta, I've seen the way politics affects people's lives, and one thing I tell my wife all the time is when people say, oh, I don't really focus on politics. I'm not interested in that. And I'm like, well, nobody's saying that you have to be,
right?
But there's a degree of privilege, no matter who you are, if you decide you're not interested. Like even for me, if I decide I didn't want to pay attention, there's a degree of privilege in that, whether it's gender privilege or class.
Oh yeah.
But to get to the larger point about Trumpism, I'm not sure some of these folks could be saved. And I don't think that that's the worst thing in the world, because to go, I think I'm correctly thinking of Karl Popper and his paradox of tolerance, and that to have a tolerant society, I believe it was him. He said you can't tolerate everything, because if you tolerate everything, then you will get to a point where nothing can be tolerated, nothing can stand. And the truth is, I think that not like some of these folks don't want to believe the truth. Like, let me give you an example of what I deal with on this, because I actually live near some Trump supporters. One of them, like my neighbor, is a Trump supporter, and him and I still talk. In part because he lives near me and knows where I live, but
oh my God, I would be so afraid.
yeah, but here's the thing: he's not a terrible person. He's older than me. He's like in his 60s. He's from the North, and when you listen to him, you're listening to an evangelical as a certain way of seeing the world, and they listen to Fox News and Rush Limbaugh, things that normally make me nauseous, but I listen to occasionally to understand what that side is saying. But listening to him talk, him and I just had a conversation about COVID a few days ago. And he just kept pushing back against the facts that I gave him. And because every time I would say, oh, I'm taking all these precautions because of COVID, he would laugh. And I'm like, I don't really understand why you're laughing at something that's killed 2 million people around the world, has wiped out trillions of dollars of wealth, and has only led to more contagious strains and variants. And he just kept taking the side of, it's a thing, but we shouldn't live in fear, that kind of thing. And I just kept talking to him, and I'm like, do you not understand the severity of this? And so with him and I, like one thing I've always said to older people is, I don't think y'all realize how lucky you had it, because there was a time in American discourse going back to the 90s and before where there was a common set of facts. And so we could disagree, but we were still operating with the same set of facts. You
Right.
go back even farther, and there's three TV channels. There's three.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever we watched, it was all the same thing.
Right.
So now everything is splintered and fractured. And so I don't think there's anything we could do to actively bring folks back. And I'm not sure that we should try to, because some of these folks have done too much damage. But I do think that if folks are willing to say, because this is where I stand, if you're willing to say, hey, look, man, he got me. Like, I believed what he said. He got me. I got God. I'm like, you know what? Okay, hey, things happen. Mistakes are made. As long as you weren't one of these people who's tearing up the Capitol, or as long as you're not a person, like, even if you say, you know what? I bought into his white supremacy, and I've looked at things further, and I was wrong. I was misled, and I want to learn, and I want to change. If that person is sincere, I think there should always be room for them.
Yeah,
there should always be room.
Because, I fell down that anti-SJW pipeline, but I think what stopped me from, going fully down it was, A, being black, and B, being an atheist. But,
yeah.
You have these channels like OAN and what's the other one?
OAN, Newsmax.
Newsmax, yeah. And also you have like these right-wing, conservative figures on YouTube that'll just that also contributes in leading people astray.
Yep.
Like, for example, there's this one, her name was like Romy Millennial. I still follow her on here because, she's fine as hell. But but like when I first started watching it, I was like, okay, she's just this conservative who don't know nothing. Okay, like she's probably gonna realize what she's doing. But then Glenn Beck started giving her money, and now she's like this. She's pretty much a white nationalist, pretty much now. I mean,
hey, look, man, never underestimate the money that's coming from the right wing. This is, again, it ties to what I was saying earlier about the Overton window shifting right. Like, again, as I was saying with Bernie, people will say, oh, Bernie's left wing. And I'm like, no, actually, Bernie is a centrist. If you look at politics not through the American lens, but through the global lens, everything Bernie advocates is what you'd get in Canada, Spain, New Zealand. And New Zealand's a little left, but the point still stands. The things that Bernie advocates is the Nordic model. Like, it's not Che Guevara. It's not. It's not the caricature of communism that we make it out to be.
Like in these right wing things, like all you have to say is socialist. All you have to say is communist, and like, oh shit, and they're like, oh shit, we can't trust that. No,
and what's so frustrating about that is when they
don't know what the fuck it means.
Exactly, because if you said to them, like I had this conversation once at work. This guy was talking about socialized medicine, and he was like, we don't need that. I was like, but we already have it.
Right.
I was like, we have Medicare and Medicaid. What do you think those are? And he just kind of looked at me. You know what he had? He had that look in his eyes that a computer, it's like when a computer just turns off and has to reboot, and it's
Mm-hmm.
just kind of stuck for a
See, like,
minute.
little thing, like...
Rainbow Wheels. He was just like, huh? And that makes conversations sometimes difficult, because when you're talking to people about politics and these issues, there is very much a preferred approach to talking to people, and that's very much by listening more than talking, by understanding
Mm-hmm.
where people are coming from. But it becomes difficult to do, from
When
my
they're...
perspective, when we're not agreeing
Right, on
on,
what the facts are,
yes,
like basic facts, like...
yeah, we're not agreeing on facts, we're not agreeing on shared humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very hard, I think, to have those conversations when we're not even agreeing on those basics.
Right, like, you know how disgusting it is when, like, you know, you're trying to talk about raising the minimum wage, but it's like, well, I just don't think that somebody who flips a burger, like, sir, that person deserves to live too, you know what I mean? But going back to
Yeah,
this, now, I was a little uncomfortable saying, you know, this is all Trump's fault because, you know, like I said in my intro, I think this is a problem that's been brewing since Reconstruction.
absolutely.
But I will say though,
Absolutely.
like, you know, like Fox News was made, and, you know, like since then it's been scaring the shit out of the white middle class, you know, like, I mean, I'm serious, right? Like, cause you know,
Yeah.
like Hannity and what's the guy who recently got like O'Reilly, like he was
Yeah, Bill
the...
O'Reilly.
Yeah, like he was the Crowder back then. You know what I'm saying? And like, and just imagine getting fed this like for years. You
Day
have a
after day.
child, you feed them that. They grow up in that house, Fox News house. You know, you grow up with all this. Like, I don't know. I can see this like kind of. Would you say like that kind of contributed to the whole Trump being able to come up like, hey, yeah.
Absolutely, man. I think there's a couple of things that can explain Trump. And I could put blame in a couple different places. I could blame Democrats and Republicans for Trump.
Mm-hmm.
But in the short term, I would say that Fox News absolutely played a role, because because before Trump ran for office, Trump was pushing the birtherism.
Yep.
Okay? And that birtherism helped him because he was a voice in that. He would go on Fox and Friends and he would talk about that. And so then when you look at the role he played with the birtherism and the questioning of Obama's citizenship because he's black. Like I have many policy disagreements about Obama. I have many policy issues with him, but it would be unfair to even argue that he did not face all these mountains because he was black.
Oh, of course.
But when you look at the birtherism, then you also now have to look at Republicans, and you've also got to look at Fox News and the media, because then you see that Republicans are feeding all this. Like, the Republicans knew what they were doing when they were feeding this to the base, because they started this with the Tea Party, and the Tea Party is big money. It's an AstroTurf campaign, which means it's a fake grassroots. Glenn Beck, Hannity, Bill O'Reilly, Koch brothers, Adelson, like all of these guys. Like, so it goes back to what you said, like they're all contributing to that, and they're just fueling it because it's getting them what they want, which is tax cuts, deregulation, no one touching the military budget, and cutting as many social programs as possible, and having that money directed back into the pockets of the rich and the powerful.
Yeah, I mean, because, you know, say what you want about a conservative, like the average conservative, sure, they might be, you know, whatever intelligence level you might want to put them at, but come on now, like, no one's a higher up. They're so good at marketing because, you know, because like when Trump was coming in, like they was able to sell conservatism as being counterculture. Like,
Yes,
you remember
yes.
Paul Joseph Watson saying, "We are the counterculture." Like, no, you're not. Like, you know what I mean? But
I know, it's
but they
like
sold it.
we're the counterculture who believes what our grandparents believe.
Right.
Like,
who believes in going to church and shit. And like,
but you know, real quick on that, I saw that in real life and it blew me away because I actually saw Trump in person when he was running for president.
Really?
Yeah, before things got really, really bad. He was up in Norcross. Um, and I had an opportunity. So that day he did a rally, and then that night Ben Carson did a book signing. And of course I chose Trump because Ben Carson is boring. And also because I had predicted, and I am not a Trump supporter in any breath, just in case people are watching this, but I had predicted in February 2016 that Trump had the best chance to win the election over everyone else that was running. And it was because I'd been following politics and I saw
Mm.
that out of all the people who was running, like David Axelrod ran Obama's campaign, and he said that Americans vote for the remedy to the previous president and not a replacement. So they don't want the same thing that they had previously. They want contrast, somebody that they think is going to solve the problem of the last presidency. So Trump to me seemed like he fit that model. So I went to the rally, and oh man, so many stories from that. But I was standing there and Trump was bashing the media. He's just bashing all these publications, and people are watching, and people are was laughing in with him, not at him. And like veterans are staring at me funny, and I'm like, ooh, I'm not
Right.
welcome here.
Yeah.
What? There was this young guy, and he had on a shirt, and it said Reagan 84 or whatever the year was. And I thought about that when you talk about the countercultural, because I was like, what young person is wearing a Reagan shirt? But there were some young people there, and I do think that like Trump as a troll appealed to some people, particularly maybe a few young folks. I don't know how many young folks voted for Trump. Like
Yeah, that facts over feels joints.
yeah, I don't know. You're younger folks, man. Y'all got more access to information. You see through BS in a way that previous generations don't. So I'd have to see the data. If
Y-
somebody said if somebody said younger folks believe anything, I'd be like, I don't
You
know
know
about
what? I had to see that data too because surprisingly, I did see Gen Z folks supporting Trump.
that. Really?
Yeah, you see, there's a Trump supporter TikTok. You see those Gen Zers in there. Like there are some young people who
But are they
support Trump.
real?
Like,
Are they
I mean,
real?
I would say they were probably just influenced by their family or something like that,
Okay.
or just from a position of privilege because most of them look like they got some money.
I know people who get their politics from daddy. You know what I mean, and
and
they don't really think about it for themselves.
and too and, like I said, I almost got roped into that anti SJW culture, like the gaming and the new atheists groups were a definite place for them to fish out of.
Man, look, that's real. Now, when you say the gaming stuff, do you mean like Gamergate?
Yeah, because because how hmm, Anita Sarkeesian. I like Anita. I consider Anita the little sister of gamers. She does say some stupid shit every now and then, but she's not evil. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, she does have to get harassment. But yeah, that's pretty much what that was. Just
Okay.
gamers thinking, oh, the feminists are trying to trying to make our games bad, and of course of course people like Milo and Sargon used the Gamergate to get the to get them. Then as far as like the new atheist movement,
Yeah.
during Charlie Hebdo, people were saying some real questionable things as a result. Like, well, why did they draw the cartoon? Which, you know, don't you fucking ask that. Like, why are you killing people with cartoons? So I believe I guess the perceived softness on Islam was what made the atheists, like young atheists, kind of go on to that anti SJW and eventually, become right wing hacks.
Can, can we talk about this for a second? Because there's two quick things I want to say about this. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The first thing I'll say is actually the first thing I'll say is the thing about the new atheists in Islam that, like you, I found myself deep in that debate, that discussion that was being had. And I think what helped me kind of reorient myself as far as looking at the way that the debate was happening was the debate that happened between Noam Chomsky and Sam Harris. I don't know if you ever
Mm.
read those.
Noam.
Yeah, Noam
Never.
Chomsky and Sam Harris did a written correspondence
Oh,
debate.
it was written. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And it was very fascinating because I would argue like Noam Chomsky argued circles around Sam, and
Mm.
Sam didn't do a good job at all. But it was because Noam's argument was America has a long history of brutalizing Middle Eastern people and countries,
Mm-hmm.
and that is what is the strongest lead into this violence that we are receiving, with 9/11 and different things. And 9/11 is its own can of worms because you have the United States going into Afghanistan and